Hey, it's Alice. So I am out here in my yard doing some little yard work type tasks and some gardening, and I wanted to show you how you can use these regular activities and regular chores, things like that around your house that you can use towards doing your shadow work unconsciously. So here's what's cool. Okay. So let me give you a little background that I think might help. So I was a counselor and have a degree in counseling, and one of my favorite you study all this history of counseling, and they're like modern ways of working with people, but they're all informed by these little pockets of therapy theory throughout the past few decades, because psychotherapy is really not that old. It's only maybe as old as like the 20s and the 30s. In Victorian times, they were sort of getting into it. Anyway, so there was this guy in the 50s named Fritz Perl. And I just said it wrong, but like he is German, and Fritz Perl is one of my favorite. We would watch these old videos of people doing therapy, these big names doing therapy, and he was one of them. So his big theory was called Gestalt theory. So the Gestalt is basically this idea. It is another way of saying, so my energy people, like people who talk about energy and hermetics, there's this phrase, as above, so below. So basically what Gestalt is, it talks about how everything in your psyche is representative of a lower and a lower and a lower states of your consciousness. So there's this like way of working with people whereby you can peel back the onion. This was like the first use of that kind of phrase. That's where it comes from. But peeling back the onion and revealing different lower ways of conceptualizing deep feelings, deep beliefs, values, things like that. Memories. So different levels of consciousness there, and each one is representative of the whole. So each one is representative of like a dimension of the whole. Like the lower you go, you're still processing the same energy, it's just on a different dimension. And the lower you go, the more ingrained it is. So Gestalt therapy, one of the things that he was big on was dream work, actually. And so this is where the theory about dreaming, and this is like how I conceptualize dreams. It's just a way for a lower level of our consciousness to work through trauma and memories and experiences of your life that your subconscious is ready to work on, but may not be ready to bring out into the like 3D levels of consciousness, where you would need to process that using your like tears, and they would come out on your body, and like ailments and things like that. So dreams are a way of processing that stuff before you ever even get to those levels. And they are a rapid way of consolidating things. And so every day when you dream, you're actually consolidating all of the memories and all of the consciousness, all of the experience that you had during the day. And you're trimming off the stuff that you really don't need, and you're reprogramming the connections in your brain. So this is sort of like hitting the reset button on your computer, or turning it off and back on, or reformatting it, where you're moving stuff around on your computer so that the pathways, the electric pathways and the circuits are more efficient. And so this is a way of doing this in your mind, in your neurology, is to access and these lower levels of consciousness while you are waking. So Pearl talked about how like I said, he was big on dream interpretation and dream work, and how powerful that can be. So he would analyze people's dreams, and he believed that every single aspect of your dream, every single facet, every single object, every single place, every single stair step, every single person represents a part of you, a part of the whole of you. And each one of those things represents your consciousness. And so this is like, so he would say to his clients, like maybe they tell a dream about being chased by a tiger and running up a tree, and then a monkey jumps out of the tree and attacks the tiger, and the tiger disappears. You know, you can come up with some whole dream that somebody might have. And so what Pearl would do, he would get people to really go deeply into the state of consciousness of that dream so it could flow, but then use your focus and your attention to direct it to to different aspects of the dream, and tell the story of the dream, tell the narrative of the dream through the perspective of that content of your dream. So so in this particular example, initially you might probably would tell this dream from the perspective of some kind of feeling that feels like you. You never really see you, but it's like it's you. And sometimes it's like a different you, but so you tell the perspective from your own, and then you look around in the dream, and so he'll like work through going through every single other aspect of the dream, like, okay, now tell it from the perspective of the tiger, now tell it from the perspective of the monkey, now tell it from the perspective of the tree, like, and from the jungle, if that's where you are. So he would go through, and so it was this way of like giving voice and acknowledging and releasing different parts of consciousness that were even more buried than, the initial, like an initial interpretation of the dream, which might just be about like, okay, a simple version would be like, tigers represent this sort of feminine, independent energy that's just like this ultimately powerful but peaceful otherwise, until it's really going to go on the attack kind of energy, which is scaring him. So, and so that's like a way that a therapist might help somebody to interpret a dream. But this is a very novel way of looking at things. So let's go back to our like theories of consciousness, and really how the levels of consciousness build on each other. So there are everyone has a frequency. Everything in our world has an energetic frequency. So you might realize that I might be getting at the point that getting to eventually, that the aspects of the dream all have a frequency as well, a frequency that you're processing. And the frequencies come together to give you the narrative and the visual experience and the feelings of that dream, to deliver you that energy that you can then work through. So in the mind, as we said, there are different levels of consciousness. And one of those levels of consciousness that we don't really talk that much about as like a very interesting level of consciousness is just basic wakefulness. So you go to the subconscious, you go to the unconscious, you have layers of perspective on all of the matter and the material of the experience of your life. Each one of those levels of consciousness, when you move up and down and get your consciousness into those lower levels, such as a dream state where you're in the levels of the subconscious and the unconscious, and actually the collective unconscious, but that, but you're in different energies and able to process things from different perspectives. And these are different dimensions. So the dream state, the place in our consciousness where we go when we're in a dream state, what I'm saying, it corresponds to what we're getting at, is that it actually does correspond to everything in the energy of your waking life too. There's this way that people describe life being a dream, or, what if life is just a dream and we're going to wake up at some point? And in my view, that is like ultimately true, because there are different levels of dreaming. And our wakeful life is really just a representation of all the energies of the things that we have experienced and the people that we've experienced and how our consciousness has evolved over the course of our life. So, our wakeful life, every single thing has representation, every single thing has a spirit, every single thing has a frequency. Even the combinations of different things. When you look at like a forest, it's like each of those individual trees has an energy, each of those individual leaves, and the concept of like, okay, there's the woods when you don't necessarily process the individuals. So there's so many frequencies always working in our consciousness, and some of them are in lower levels of consciousness than others. Like even in our wakefulness, we see a lot of things and perceive a lot of things in our subconscious instead of in our conscious. Like, so you might not even recognize consciously that, there is, let's see, there's some kind of house in the background. Like I might not have noticed that consciously, but like I just saw there's like a bluish truck in there, and that could subconsciously cue memories of some kind of blue truck that my great grandfather had that always sat on the farm for years and we thought was pretty cool and would ride through the pastures. But it's like that's happening in my unconscious as I'm talking to you. Like every single thing is spinning off into a different way of processing and a different way of perceiving your reality, a different story that your mind is telling you, a different collective story, because all of the stories of these energies, everything, the things you're processing consciously and the things you're thinking, feeling, those are different levels of consciousness. Thinking, feeling, and being just shown in the background. That's all. This is the idea that life is like something like a hologram. It's a projection of our consciousness, and the 3D energy of our life when we are in wakefulness is very dense. Like this tree. Where is it? I mean, it's dense, it's hard, you can touch it, you can smell it possibly. Like, of course you can smell it. You can experience the transpiration of the air coming off of it. You can experience different plants in all kinds of different ways. Your eyes can be really fascinated by and calibrated by the different shapes that you see in the leaves because of the energy frequencies of different shapes of sacred geometry. Everything in your world is constantly trying to calibrate and process your consciousness. And in the 3D, we accumulate karma, which corresponds to all of the physical stuff in our life that is of lower vibrational energy. So this tree is not my karma unless I have a very particular idea of how I want the tree to grow in my yard, and and I'm holding up pruning it for some reason, and then it might be kind of karma that if the tree loses a branch or something like that you wouldn't really want to happen. Okay, so things that have life can be representative of karma too, but really the things in your life that are natural, that carry those kinds of energies, are the best ones to calibrate yourself to. So you're constantly calibrating with every single one of your senses, and your senses are not finite modes of experience. Like everybody has, like we're trained from a young age to not be able to ignore these types of senses, but we have senses of like extrasensory beings and spirits, and senses of like where it's somewhere in between or beyond like seeing smells and hearing colors. Like that's called synesthesia, when you can kind of mix up your senses. But really all of that is something that's a natural ability of humans. So what does this mean? So we're living in a dream basically, where it's like looking around, every single thing somehow represents something of me, and which things are making me feel calibrated because they are a high vibrational energy, or they're completely in tune with me and my innate vibration. So, and which things are causing lower vibrational feelings, lower vibrational, like attachments to the narratives around something. Like if that story about the truck had been that one time had a car crash with a truck like that, and that might be a lower vibrational type of karma, that it's like your brain is actually your mind, the world, your environment, the projection of your consciousness that is the environment, is showing you something that's helping you work through that residual karma that still has a memory caught up in your nervous system about this trauma that happened to you when you had that car crash. So the cool thing about wakefulness, like people make a big deal about this concept called lucid dreaming, where you are awake in a dream and can do basically whatever you want. But you do that in a dream and you're actually you're creating karma in the dream world as well. Like you can do that, like depending on how you use it. And your subconscious does a really excellent job of working through your karma and your trauma in this subconscious state. Like to go into a conscious state within a dream means that you're not letting your natural processes take care of the trauma and the memories from the day. So be careful with I'm not saying it's really terrible, but like people who do it on purpose all the time, like you might be avoiding something in your life because you're not actually going into the deep state of sleep that you really need in order for your brain to be able to process those deep memories and traumas. So you're just keeping it trapped in your system. But the 3D is lucid dreaming to the extreme. It's just that we've collectively established these laws of physics because the all is mental. We have invented and built our entire universe around these 3D laws of physics and conceptualizations of how matter can move and how matter can exist and what elements there are. So we have the collective, the all, the source energy, like God created all of the 3D based on mental concepts, which are really just frequencies. So there was an original frequency that divided and divided and divided, an original charge and an original negative space that the charge was able to bang out into. It's the Big Bang. Okay, so I get real ahead of myself. So everything in our universe is representative of all of your individual states of consciousness, all of your individual identities as a spirit, all of your individual souls. Everyone's individual soul is an aspect of the collective consciousness that has the God energy that has created our physical world in this dimension. So just like our spirit, our body, our nervous system is able to perceive light of some colors, of some frequencies. So we can't really perceive ultraviolet light with our eyes, but we're able to measure it. And there are other bands of, because light, the only thing that light is energy. And so sound is actually light, and because sound is energy, everything's just wavelengths and frequencies. Vibration, everything is just vibration. We, in the process of creating the 3D, have established these rules of physics that our entire universe operates from. But in your, what feels like your quote unquote normal life, IRL, in real life, it doesn't feel like that, does it? You don't have the experience of walking around I'm in a dream and I can actually, like, this is actually the ultimate lucid dream, is wakefulness and the 3D world. It's just that there are some established limits on it. And the limits are actually the things that makes the 3D really interesting, makes it so that we can see with our eye. We have like these 3D ways to perceive energy that it's not available in the other dimensions. So the reason we keep reincarnating back and back is because the energy of the 3D is pretty attractive. It's nice to have, like, our souls love being among the plants and those other ways of looking at consciousness. Our souls like love the 3D, love like being able to walk around, love being able to swim, things that you can't really do if you are totally in a vibrational energy that's beyond or outside of the 3D realm. So in your world, you can actually use this to process trauma in a very intentional way. So while you don't want to be lucid dreaming all the time, lucid dreaming in your life is why we are here. It is what we are doing. We are processing everything that's happened to us in our daily life and through our interactions and through the things and objects that we interact with. So if you start thinking about it, all the natural energies are the good energies and representative of your consciousness, your higher consciousness. So by that, we see that like all my plants, all my lettuces that have gone to seed, everything is actually representing my own personal state of consciousness. And the whole of my state of consciousness. So if I come out here and focus my attention on working in the garden in particular ways, you can specifically hit on different aspects of your karma that your soul really, really wants to work on. So if I am feeling like overwhelmed, try to get and by like shadow work and emotional sluggishness, spiritual sluggishness, things like that, look around and see what kind of karma has built up in your life, or what kind of vehicles are around you that can help you to lucidly work on this trauma in this alchemized way where you don't actually have to sit down and write down all your traumas, because that's actually making that energy more dense, unless you are called to and feel like, okay, like it really helps me to pour out these feelings. But like a lot of times, like therapists and people tell you to go home and journal and write about what's happened to you and make you talk about it. And it's really like actually bringing that energy into a more dense state. So you can use your intention instead of like just getting kind of bogged down in the dense energy of your life. Like look around for ways that you can high vibrationally do things that represent things that you would love to do to your subconscious. So I would love to be able to weed out all of the icky memories and icky feelings in my body from certain interactions and certain people and certain experiences in my life. And particularly, during like right now, for example, I am in a particular state of consciousness where there are certain things and certain auras of different energies that are floating around me all the time. So this is really, they're in my energetic sphere. It's like things that you're worried about right then. You're worried about work, you're worried about like your child, you're worried about different things that are actually like kind of floating around in your kind of vague conscious. So instead of like letting yourself get wound up in that, you come out to your garden or come out to your yard. A garden is a pretty privileged thing to have. Unfortunately, that's really fucked up. But, and you can go to your garden and intentionally look for and remove the weeds that are there while you are thinking to yourself, I am weeding out all lower energy connections to which I did not consent. I am weeding out all energetic connections to which I did not consent. I am weeding out all energetic connections to which I did not consent. And just keep saying, either say it out loud or say it in your head as you're going. So create a little mantra while you're doing these activities. And it actually helps this is a way of lucid dreaming to process your trauma in this way that prevents you from having to go deeply into those traumas and dredge them up, because there really is such a thing as dredging them up. Like, every time you're forced to talk about something that is outside of your realm of consciousness or outside of your, like, what you really want to talk about, like memories from combat, memories from an abusive relationship, like specific things like that people might try to force out of you, that's actually causing way more damage than it is to just let people naturally exist with that energy. And if it comes to the surface and there's there's an opportunity, or that the person wants to take to talk about that stuff or get it out on paper, then that is the work that you need to be doing. That's like great. But forcing ourselves to do work that we're not ready to do is not good. Shadow work does not mean like punishing yourself by like just dumping all of the crap in a pile in your yard, and sitting there staring at like all of the bad memories and the trauma, and like thinking you're supposed to sit there and write it all down, or like make lists of all of your trauma, which is like that's what you're supposed to do when you're doing trauma therapy if you are an evidence-based practitioner. And I do not believe in it, because none of the other research about trauma like jibes with the idea that we're supposed to concretely go back into these memories and address them, and like talking things through. Like, that's such a big it's like so I don't know, like everybody talks about like, oh, you just need to talk it out, talk things through, just need to be able to talk about your traumas, things like that. And like, don't do stuff you don't want to do. Don't do stuff that feels icky. You need to get in touch with how you tell whether something is lower vibrational or higher vibrational by noticing everything is love or fear. Everything is on a binary. Every single thing in your life can be categorized as like something that you interpret as consciously as either love or fear. And so you can start to notice in your body, and particularly in your heart and in your gut, when things are lower vibrational versus when things are higher vibrational. So if you feel like a little pull and a little lift, or you feel like your heart do something that's like it's opening up, kind of like expands, then those are the things that are high vibrational in your life. And those are the things that you don't need to weed out. And the things that make you have a little tiny pit in your stomach, even like the slightest pit in your stomach, like, don't do those things. That is and you hone this skill of being able to go, yeah, it's like swipe left, swipe right, like yes, no, about every single thing in your environment. And so I was out here cleaning up sticks in my yard, which I had put off for a while, because I don't really care about having that neat of a yard, but it's also something that like I know is going to bother me eventually. And there have been several like windstorms that have brought a bunch of sticks into the yard. And so here I am cleaning up sticks. And I come outside, and I was doing something at my car. I was gonna go in my car, and then I was like, oh, I just need to clean out my car. So it's like my brain starts immediately trying to do trauma work while I'm awake, because I was sitting around feeling down, feeling very low energy, feeling this dense energy. And there's been a lot happening with like the Schumann resonance, and particularly the solar storms and coronal mass ejections recently, that would make trauma work be coming to the surface a lot and make energy really sluggish. So I was kind of sitting around in this energy trying to figure out what to do. And I walk out to my car to try to do something, like I was going to put my bike on my car. and try and get myself to go ride my bike. And then I noticed something in my car that I needed to throw away. And then I remembered, then I just start like looking at the car and I'm like, okay, maybe this is the time that I need to take some of this stuff out of the car. So and then as I'm doing this, there are some sticks around my car. And so I start like kind of mindlessly bending down and picking up the sticks and putting them in a pile. And then I consciously notice it's like, okay, these are things that I didn't plan to do, but my brain is trying to work on like not only the physical karma, like the energy of the sticks and the energy of the stuff in your car are actually things that your brain has generated that's karma that you haven't necessarily worked on, or karma and like residual trauma, residual energy that's in your system that needs to be taken care of and hasn't been taken care of in a less 3D kind of way. So yes, there were storms that threw some sticks in my yard, but all of that's, even storms in the weather, that's all representative of you, of your state of consciousness, because the all is mental and we are each the all. So I'm picking up sticks. I am cleaning up all residual stuff that I haven't really that's built up in my karma, built up in my energetic system, and trying to use my intention. I'm using my intention and creating mantras along the way that help me to whatever comes to my head, because that's also good. Use your stream of consciousness, and that helps you to be able to lucidly dream within your life. And while you're cleaning up sticks in your yard, you can check it out. That's a good one. Let me see it. Anyway, I'll go wash it. So I'm out here cleaning up sticks, and then suddenly I start seeing feathers, which are a sign that angels are near to me. One of my signs that I came up with and established that rule and that agreement with the 3D. And now that's what that means. And so I'm out here cleaning up sticks, and suddenly I start seeing feathers, and it's like, okay, I'm in the right place. I'm doing the right karma. Like, why am I cleaning up these sticks right now? Oh, this is why. I'm finally ready to have some kind of concrete way to work through these things that have built up in my psyche recently that I haven't necessarily dug through. This could be called witchcraft, actually. It's like, this is how you use crystals and tools and ceremony to work through, to transform energy. It's the same kind of stuff. So that's really cool. Okay, so I hope you can go clean up some sticks today, or whatever you want. There's another feather. See? Okay. All right. I'll see you later.